All right, everybody, welcome back to the #1 television program in the history of the entire universe. I am Brian Lee Durfee, author of The Forgetting Moon, The Blackest Heart, and The Lonesome Crown, all three books published by Simon & Schuster's Saga Press. Today we're going to be reviewing both the book and the movie version of Gorky Park by Martin Cruz Smith. Now, the movie version I have came in this DVD 3-pack with Ken Follett's Eye of the Needle movie version, Gorky Park, and then, of course, Company Business. I don't know what that's about. I'll probably eventually watch it. But anyway, I just got done reading the book for the second or third time in my life and just got done watching the movie for the second time in my life. And we're going to review both of them. So let's talk about the book a little bit and the movie a little bit. First, just some general themes of both and just what's going on. So Gorky Park, the book, came out in 1981, was a massive hit, big bestseller. The movie version came out in 83, right thereafter, just because it was such a big selling book, written by Martin Cruz Smith. Now, I collect, and it ended up the main character in this book, Arkady Renko, the police investigator, the Russian police investigator, became a main character in 9 more books written by Martin Cruz Smith. I've got them right here. Polar Star, book number 2, one of my favorite thrillers of all time. In fact, Gorky Park probably ranks up there as one of my favorite thrillers too. Anyway, what are the themes of this book and the movie combined? It's kind of like the paranoia and just the anxiety of being a Russian during the Cold War, late 70s, early 80s, whether you were working for the police department like Arkady Renko, or you were a KGB, or just a normal citizen. Just the absolute suffocating paranoia these people felt as they lived under the communist regime, always looking over their shoulder, not trusting anyone, not even their own wives or husbands. And it's just a bleak, paranoid existence. At least that's what the movie portrays and the book portrays. Now, I didn't ever lived over in Russia at any point in time, much less before the Berlin Wall came down or before all of, and so I have no idea. I'm just taking the author's word for it. In fact, when they went to film the movie, they wanted to film it in Moscow, in Gorky Park, and the Russians were like, F no, that book is very anti-Russian. You guys can go yourself. You can film it somewhere else. Which was interesting because I was watching the movie. That was before I knew, because I did the Wikipedia search after I just watched the movie for the second time. And as I was watching the movie, it just looked like it was filmed in Russia. Everything was so dark and grim and dirty and gritty. Like every scene was under fog or clouds. There was no sunshine in it at all. All the buildings just looked grimy and very early 1980s, 60s, 70s, just kind of dumpy, and all the cars were all trash. And everybody's just walking around huddled up in their little Russian hats and clothing. And I was like, man, I think they filmed this in Russia. Because there's a few scenes that take place in Stockholm, Sweden. And when those scenes go to Stockholm, Sweden, everything seems sunshiny. The buildings look modern. The Sheraton Hotel sign is all glowing and glittery, and it looks just like, and it's like a contrast, right? But then I found out the Russians didn't want them to film the movie in Moscow, and they filmed the whole thing in Helsinki, Sweden, or Finland, or wherever. One of those two countries. I get them mixed up. Forgive me. I've never been to any of them. I should probably go. I should probably get my shit straight. I think it was Finland. Is Helsinki in Sweden or Finland? You guys tell me. Should have looked that up. Anyway, some of the other themes that are in both the movie and the book are not only the paranoia the Russians felt, but the burning desire and the dangerous lengths a lot of them would go to defect out of Russia or to get smuggled out of Russia. and the people that would help them do this, the Americans that would help them do this, sort of the dirty dealings that would go on between people that wanted to help other people get smuggled out. It's kind of like how on our own border between Mexico, the cartels sort of do a lot of dirty deeds to help people south of the border get up into, and it's just a racket. It's a money-making scheme. It's dangerous. It's full of blood and guts and bad people, and that's the way it was in Russia too, and that's one of the themes. Another one of the themes is the trade, the illegal fur trade between Russia and the United States of different types of exotic Russian animals, and how that plays into how people get moved in and out of different countries, and how the different rich people in both countries sort of ply this trade of exotic sables and other animals that Americans will pay millions of dollars for these furs. Let's talk about the book now. I mean, okay, so there's a couple of differences between the book and the movie too, just as far as the plot goes. There is one of my favorite plots in the book was our main character, Arkady Renko, the police investigator, and we'll get into what he's investigating and the murders and things like this in a minute. But when he's married in the book, and one of my favorite characters in the book was his wife. She's very devious, and it also that relationship also plays into the paranoia of you can't even trust your own spouse in this communist regime because their marriage is not very good, and she uses as sort of leverage because Arkady Renko doesn't really like communism. He doesn't really like the KGB. He sometimes in their own private conversations would talk about his dislike of these things. Well, she uses that against him in a lot of different ways to just F his life, to just get him into trouble. And since they're going through kind of a breakup, and that way I just found that, but that whole plot thread was yeeted right out of the movie, which, I mean, they could have just kept it in, and they could have filmed a few scenes where just maybe extend the movie by 10 minutes if they just kept that. But anyway, that was kind of a disappointment to me. I forgot about all that, but that whole plot thread was yanked. But everything else in the story was pretty true to what was going on in the book. The movie matched the book pretty well. Both dynamite, both just very gripping. Now, what is this story about? Let's get into that. So it opens up with Arkady Renko is investigating. I mean, right out of the gate, there's 3 dead bodies in Gorky Park. And as Gorky Park is described in this, it's the most famous park in downtown Russia. A lot of people are always there, both night and day. How did 3 people get shot in the middle of the park in the wintertime when there's ice skaters all around and different people just frolicking in the snow? How did they get shot and nobody noticed this? So we've got a mystery here. Not only that, but each of the corpses is missing their fingertips and their faces have been skinned right off, just taken right off. So they're like, okay, and that's the way Russians, there's a scene in The Wire, HBO's The Wire, about the Baltimore police and the drug dealers in Baltimore, where there's a dead body and the cops call up the Russian mob and like, did you have anything to do with this body? And the Russian guy goes, does the body still have a head? Does it still have its hands? They're like, yeah. Oh, we did not kill that person. Gorky Park opens right up, just proving that fact. 3 dead bodies, missing their faces, missing their fingertips. Anyway, one of the things that happens, and this reminds me, is as Arkady Renko is the police investigators investigating this murder, he takes these heads, once the autopsy guy no longer has use of these heads with the missing faces, he takes them to a forensic anthropologist who works at a university, and he constructs people's faces from old skulls that they find, and like the old Genghis Khan, they find his skull and reconstruct his face or whatever. So he reconstructs the faces of these, and they go into a lot of detail of how this is done. I didn't even know they did that. But anyway, they do. But the person that played the forensic anthropologist, as I was watching, I was like, God, that guy looks familiar. Who is that? It was the guy that played the Emperor in all the Star Wars movies. I don't remember his name right now, but you know, the guy that, you know, played the bad baddie of the baddest in all the Star Wars movies. And here's the thing: is the reason he was so familiar is because he played the same. I mean, the guy is a professor in this movie, an anthropologist, and he plays the anthropologist with every bit of evil relish as he plays the Emperor in Star Wars. But the role didn't call for him to be that creepy. He's just a professor. I got a kick out of that. I'm like, oh my God, it's the Emperor. It works for the Moscow University doing forensic anthropology, and he's as creepy as the Emperor. I was just like, what? Whatever. Maybe the dude only can play one role, and then that's it. He just plays a bad guy. Okay, anyway, let's move on from that. In the book, we've got this investigation. Arkady Renko is the homicide investigator. Everything seems fishy about these murders. He knows that this goes way deeper than just some random killing, because in Moscow, as we find out in the book, murder just wasn't a big thing. I mean, you just didn't run across murder that much, and if it was murder, it was usually just a drunken guy beating up his wife. Or the only other case that Arkady Renko had worked of any significance that wasn't just a dumb, stupid drunk accidentally killing somebody was when some Jehovah's Witnesses were murdered by the KGB, which goes into that whole paranoia of the Russians just distrusting everything, including religions. And so there's this thing about Jehovah's Witnesses getting killed over in Russia, which, you know, they didn't like missionaries over there, so they... Yeah, just everything over there is... Everybody's watching everybody, and everybody's scared of everybody, and everybody's just looking over their shoulder all the time. And if you're a religious person or an American or anything, or even if you work for the police, you don't trust the KGB. If you work for the KGB, you don't trust the police. If you're in government, even if you're, I mean, it's just that it just suffocates you. As you're reading this, you're just spiraling into your own suffocation, going, my God, these characters, how can they even? And then you've got this whole subplot of people that defect, people that get themselves out of the situation. Another one of my favorite characters in both the book and the movie is Irina, who is part of the investigation. I won't say what part she is, but our main character, Arkady Renko, Irina is a very attractive actress, and she's part of the investigation. And of course, Arkady Renko makes the mistake of, you know how guys are. I mean, you know, he makes the mistake of getting involved with this girl. And there's American characters that show up. I really liked all of them, like Osborne, and then the New York City policeman that comes over. And just all the character interactions in the book and portrayed in the movie are just great. There's a lot of twists and turns in both. And like I said, the book, other than yanking out a big kind of plot point that the book had that I really enjoyed in the book, every time that Arkady and his wife were in scenes together in the book, I really enjoyed those parts. You don't get that in the movie at all. Nothing. And that's kind of my review of both, really. The book is a 10 out of 10. It's just a great thriller. The movie, gosh, if they would have really filmed it in Russia, I would have given it a 10 out of 10. That being said, I still really like this. I would give this a 9 out of 10. The Gorky Park, at least the Gorky Park part. Now, Eye of the Needle. I've decided, since this 3-pack came with the Eye of the Needle, one of the next books I'm going to read and review is Eye of the Needle. And then I'm going to watch the movie. I've not ever seen the movie Eye of the Needle, so I don't know. I'll be going into that cold. But I've read this book probably 5 times in my life. It's one of my favorite thrillers. So that's what we'll be doing next. But anyway, that's my review of Gorky Park, both book and movie.